Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and for today's video I am making some cards and some gift card boxes using some just released stamps and dies from Neat and Tangled. This is also part of their birthday celebration, so there is blog hops all week and giveaways and all kinds of fun things, and I will have info on all of that in my blog post that will be linked directly below the video. So for the main focus of my cards, I am using the new floral frame stamp set. And I have all the images lined up in my stamp platform here. And then I am stamping everything onto some BRISTOL smooth cardstock. And I use my anti-static powder tool first. And then I'm going to ink up these stamps and stamp them with VersaFine ONYX black ink. And then I am going to heat emboss them with clear embossing powder. And I've said this in a lot of my recent videos, how much I would just really prefer having the heat embossing when I'm going to do any sort of watercoloring, etc. Because the raised edges of the heat embossing keep things contained. This is definitely true when I'm working with BRISTOL smooth cardstock. Color, because of that smooth coating on the paper, water and color, they just want to run everywhere. You have to be really careful. So having that raised edge of the heat embossing really helps kind of keep things contained. And I don't have to be as careful. I can just, add my color and those raised edges keep the water kind of mostly in place. And then I can let it dry and it's good to go. So this piece of paper was big enough that I could flip it around and stamp the frame a second time. Plus I was stamping all the little extra images in the set, the flowers and leaves and whatnot. So I'm ending up with doubles of everything. That's why I ended up making 2 cards, because why not when you've got everything out. So after everything is heat embossed, I am using my Arteza real brush markers here. I'm very simple coloring. I'm using one color or one marker for each color, just scribbling the color on and then pulling it out with a water brush. And I work in fairly small sections. It doesn't matter whether I'm using these or my zigs or whatever. I find if I'm applying any sort of color with any sort of marker in this sense, like a watercolor type marker, if I work quickly, I don't have to worry about the marker like sinking into the paper and leaving like lines or streaks or anything like that. I find if I just do little areas, I never have a problem getting colors to, move and the water to move them. But if you, apply the color and do the whole image or, go off and do something else and let that marker dry, it's almost impossible to really move that color afterwards. At least that's been my experience. So that's why I just work in little tiny areas, add a little bit of color, pull it out with a water brush, go on to the next spot. So I did all the greens and then I did all the flowers in purple, added a little bit of yellow to the centers. And then I took this turquoise color and just went around the frame. I absolutely love this frame. It's so, asymmetrical and it just, I don't know. I look at it and it's like, I really like this. I really like this. So I die cut everything with coordinating dies, and the large dies for the frame, you can keep them together like I did, or you can cut them apart. If you cut them apart, you do have more options because you can just die cut just the, the outline of the floral frame and leave the center as is and stamp on that if you would like. Again, it's just personal preference. Right now I've kept them together, but I most likely am going to cut them apart down the road. But I die cut everything with the coordinating dies. And then my card base for both cards is also BRISTOL smooth cardstock, and it was cut to 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4 1/4. So these will just be top folding A2 size cards. And I kind of lined up the frame so that I could line up this Happy Birthday to You stamp that also comes in this floral frame set. And same thing, stamping it with the VersaFine ONYX black ink and then heat embossing that with the clear embossing powder. And I'm doing doubles of everything just off camera so that it's not just redundant and me doing the same steps over and over again. But after I melted this with my heat tool, I pulled out my tumbled glass distress ink and just a scrap of paper. And I'm starting with a very, very light hand, like hard to show on camera, but I'm not pressing hard on this. One, Bristol Smooth is great for blending inks. I find inks just like glide on it. Again, it's that coating on the paper. But I'm also using a very light hand, and every time I ink up the tool, I rub it off on the scratch paper first, just to remove that initial concentration of ink, because I just want a very soft, very smooth blend of that color just around the sentiment. So once I'm kind of happy with that, I am going to splatter that with a little bit of water. So I just take the nozzle right out of my distress sprayer and I tap it against my fingers or flick the edge with my fingers just to get a nice splatter. This is very, very subtle. It's very difficult to see on camera and in the photos, but it just gives it that very subtle water droplet look with such a light ink. I like it. So after I did that, there's this little dot stamp in the set, and I just inked that up with the VersaFine ink and kind of stamped it here and there, kind of like black splatter. And then I'm going to pop that frame into place. I just coated it with little 3D foam squares. And then I added the individual flower and this large leaf to it as well, just to bring in more of that purple. I really like that purple. So I use that, and then the remaining flowers and leaves and whatnot, I'm going to adhere to the inside of these cards just to give it a little something, because I didn't want to leave it plain. So after I got those adhered into place, I pulled out just some little eggshell pearls from Little Things by Lucy's cards, and added a few of those to my card just as my final little embellishment. So sprinkled those kind of wherever, somewhat randomly throughout the card front here. And then I'm just going to pick these up with my little jewel picker. And I'm just using little dabs of Gina K Connect glue. Same glue I used to adhere the flowers and leaves on the inside of the card. So just little dots of that glue, press those into place. And then that finished off the cards. And then off camera, I also used that frame on the envelopes and white heat embossed them onto the envelopes. I thought that looked so nice. Then you can like fill out the recipient's name in the center of that frame, you know, with a black pen or whatever. And I was like, oh, I love that frame. I really do. And it's the perfect size for something like that. There's still space for postage and a return address. And I love it. Love it. So that's the cards and the envelopes. The other part of the new release is this really fabulous gift card box die, which I'll get to in a minute, as well as the Thanks So Much stamp set. So I took these two frames from the Thanks So Much stamp set, and I'm stamping them and white heat embossing them onto more Bristol Smooth cardstock. So I stamped them with a clear embossing ink, and then I just use white embossing powder. You technically could use clear, but sometimes I like the white is more white than just embossing clear on white. That's just personal preference. So since I already had it out I was like heat embossing with that, and then I was going to use it for other things. Like my white embossing powder never gets put away. So I heat embossed both of those frame images with the white embossing powder. Then I used my anti-static powder tool again, and I stamped one of the sentiments from the new Thanks So Much stamp set with the VersaFine ONYX black ink, and then coated that with the clear embossing powder, and then melted that with my heat tool. So after that's melted, I'm going to take that same turquoise real brush pen and the green real brush pen, and I'm going to do very simple, basic watercoloring with that. I literally just scribble the markers on the corners of each of these images, and then pull out the color so that it fades kind of to much paler on the center, just using my little water brush. Like really simple. The green I really like. It's got like almost like a green yellow tone to it. It's just pretty. So I did the same thing with the turquoise. I scribbled it on the corners, pulled out the color. After they were dry, I trimmed them down with my scissors. And then for the actual little gift card box, I die cut these from some Simon Says Stamp, AUDREY blue and green apple cardstocks. And this die cuts the box shape as well as embosses all of the score lines. So all I'm doing is going along all of those score lines and folding everything in and then reinforcing it with my Teflon bone folder just to really get a good fold, because this is a very heavyweight cardstock. So this takes like no time at all. This is my sort of way of doing non-card items. It's like if I can just die cut it and then put it together without having to really think, like it was so easy to put together. I love it. Love it. It's so cute. So reinforced all of those fold lines, and then I took some 1/4 inch score tape. I find this is the easiest to use when it comes to assembling any sort of little box or anything like that. Any sort of 3D items, score tape is like the way to go because it's super, super strong and it's just easy to deal with. I remember back in the day using that god-awful red line tape. That stuff was the worst. With its like super staticky release, paper or release plastic, whatever it was with the red line that just, oh, I used to hate dealing with that stuff. So score tape is wonderful. So anyway, I put it just on the inner portions of those flaps. And then to assemble a box, I just take the little flaps in there and I adhere them first. Once those are adhered into place on all 4 corners, you just fold over the rest of those flaps, and that is technically the base of your box. And then the top just folds into it. Super simple. I chose to flip mine over and use the base as the top because I like the smooth look of it, I guess. So it's just personal preference how you want to assemble these and use them. So I used mine upside down just because I liked how that looked. So after I had assembled my little gift card box, I'm just going to use that score tape again to adhere my little watercolored panel to the top of it. There is a coordinating die set as well that will like do the die cutting of the rectangle with the little like slits in it. It's really neat. And there's also a little like diamond shaped die in the set as well. I don't have it, but it's definitely worth checking out because it's so Art Deco. I love it. So with this, I just adhered that flat with score tape, and then I had stamped and colored more little flowers and leaves. So I just adhered those to kind of tie everything together. And then I did the exact same thing, but with the green apple cardstock. So I've got a card with a green envelope and a green little gift box, and then I've got the AUDREY blue one. And yeah, these fit a gift card perfectly. These would also fit like a pair of earrings or a necklace or fancy little chocolates. So many little things you can put in them. They're just so cute. So, like I said, there'll be info in my blog post. I'll have links to all the supplies used with my supply list. I'll have links to the other stops on the hop. There's giveaways, all kinds of fun stuff. So definitely check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!